I'm just waiting for all you guys to start punching on for this to start loading, and then we'll get right into our conversation. How are you guys doing this morning? I hope you're all doing well. I hope you've already finished your exercises, your meditation, or maybe you're going to do that just a little bit later. Who knows? So YouTube just popped on, and now waiting for Facebook to pop on. I see you guys from Instagram is already here. Great, great. Every morning, the healthy mind. Let's see where we are here. Facebook seems to be a little bit slower than most. I don't know why that is for to come on, because I want you guys to know, if you guys have any questions or comments, you can always put it in the comment section as you're watching it live, and I'll get to see it. Sometimes I get a little bit talking too much that I don't get to see some of the comments you guys make, and I apologize, but I do get back to it later after the show. So the healthy mind, that's what we're talking about. We've been going over these series every morning at 7 a.m. Please share and like with your friends if you have any conversation or communication about what you think the healthy mind is. It's great because it goes into some neuroanatomy, goes into neurobiology. Try to help you understand it, because I think and I believe if you understand your mind, not your brain, because brain is a different thing. If you understand your mind, you're able to live a healthier life. So yesterday I started out on the emotional code, and I wrote it up here, the emotional code, and we talked about loneliness. So the loneliness I'm going to do for the rest of the week, because I can actually get into loneliness covers so much. Now I'm going to put up the emotional body. Again, oh, welcome you guys on YouTube. I'm going to put up the emotional body, my little stick figure. And you can tell why I'm doing the healthy mind and type of show now, the emotional code, is because your body holds information. Your cells hold information. Your body places emphasis on what the information is from what it's experiencing. Your body holds information of what it is from what you are experiencing. Okay? The reason why I said that twice, because loneliness is usually often used in conjunction of something else. Now, I'll say it straight off the bat. I know people can be lonely or be alone and not be lonely, right? So we have what we have. We have self, where we do we self-isolation, then we have public isolation, and then we have private isolation. And they have been doing studies on isolations for a long time. You have to have known this, because people who are put in a predicament or a situation, how are they going to handle it? They do it with people who are traveling on a space shuttle. How long can you handle this isolation? Remember, we are social animals. We were built to be a social animal. Our life conjunction is about unity. And in this time, people who have been stay at home has been isolated from their normal. Now, you could be in a house, and we know this, you can be in public, and you can see that I still feel lonely, right? We still have those self-feelings that there's no one around me, I don't have anyone. And I know they've done studies on loneliness. The reason why I've read studies or remember the studies is because I do a lot of emotional reaction training. And in that training, I help people understand their surroundings and their awareness. And I have found in some of my workshops that people never connect within the room. And now, they've come to me and said that, and I said, wow, we can talk about that later. And so what I found out talking with some of the people I've worked with is that the reason why they don't have a connection is because it's almost like a Freudian thing. It all starts out when we're young, that they never knew how to connect, because their imperfect vision, their personal imperfect vision of self disconnects from the other. Their imperfect vision of self disconnects from the others. Now, that's self-imposing. Yes. Self-imposing loneliness. Yes. But what if our environment actually discards you? Because it's like being picked for a kickball team in 7th grade. They didn't pick you, not because you couldn't kick, you didn't have 2 legs and 2 arms, but their perception of you. So they have the environment has imposed isolation on you. If that, in that case, you start to develop self-perception of imperfectionism to loneliness. Like, of course I'm alone. Why shouldn't I be alone? It's systemic from a process that has happened over time. People have felt loneliness by not getting accepted for a job or being let go from the job. Even if said boss said, you know, we're having cutbacks and we're going to let you go. That you did not cause. They looked at it as a monetary economic value of letting you go for whatever reason the corporate does. That has a cause effect on loneliness. Because again, you're being let go because they don't want you part of the group. Now the reasons are but still you're outcasted. You also develop an outcast situation if you're in a classroom and the majority of the class got over 85%. And the few who got under 85% are now isolated. We've been developing power over systems for a long time, and we've perfected it because we choose to discard people or not accept people. And because it's so common done, we figured that we could do it to ourselves, and it's okay, and it's not okay. Okay, so let's get right into it. So I'm going to draw my little head here, my neck, and my shoulders. And we're just going to go over the body with loneliness, okay? So loneliness, we know, affects the frontal cortex of the brain. We also know it affects the motor cortex, the front, motor, and central part of the brain. We'll get into how that affects tomorrow of the brain. But we know loneliness triggers disconnection between the frontal, motor cortex, and the central cortex of the brain, right? We also know that it puts tension on your shoulders. Now this is just loneliness. We also know that it affects the heart. We also know that it affects the lower part of the body, which is in the back. We have the back. Also, loneliness affects knees. That's the affective part of loneliness. That's what loneliness touches. It has other things it goes along with, right? We know heart could be grief, sadness, depression, right? The shoulders triggers burden of life, right? I feel so much things. It seems very simple. Things are burdening my life, right? It weighs heavy on my shoulders. That also institutes loneliness. This also has a lot to do with when you are either self-imposed loneliness or projected loneliness or corporate, where someone pushes you out there. You are still affecting the neurotransmitters, and it decreases. Your neurotransmitters decrease. So your neurons decrease. That's the pathways, the sympathetic pathways that's connecting to your body. Remember, once that starts to happen, it's fascinating what loneliness does, is because in your spine, as soon as the loneliness comes, it tries to increase spinal connectability or nerve connection, it starts to want to increase as this goes down, so it can increase the dopamine in a central part of the brain, because the body starts to feel it. That's why a lot of people feel tired, is because the dopamine levels are going down. So the spine tries to trigger dopamine to affect the body so it stays up. But while this is going up, eventually this starts to deplete and starts to go down. That's loneliness. Now, they have definitely done studies on, I'm going to check to see if anyone have any questions on my YouTube or Facebook page or Instagram. If you don't, okay. We know that when things start to go down and things become heavy, with different practices, where I talk about your practice and your meditation and prayers. So Dr. Paul, now that we know, and this is just, so loneliness attacks the central part of the frontal cortex, the motor cortex, the shoulders, right? The heart, down here, the back and the front, and your knees. That's the physical effect. The physical effect. Up here is burden. What loneliness triggers burden, right? It triggers it. Now, can you also have something that triggers burden? What do you think another word would trigger burden on the shoulders? What do you think it would be? Work, right? Family, things that you are accustomed to doing, right? Also can trigger burden. Like if you feel like you're the only one who's paying the bills, you're the only one who's doing this in your relationship, you're the only one, I always do, always have to do, you hear those words start to come, that's a burden, right? That isn't loneliness. There are other things that can trigger that, right? Down here in the heart, obviously breakup, sadness, family loss, grief. There are also genetic dispositions about your genetic makeup will also cause a heart to flutter. And again, has nothing to do with loneliness. Because you can feel sad for something else. You can also feel sad under being lonely. Right? So again, loneliness has a tentacle. It has a tentacle. I wonder how long that's been there. Has a tentacle of understanding of where we need to be and how we need to be it. So if you don't have what you call understanding of what your loneliness is and how it's being triggered, then we tend to lose sight of what it is that we're being lonely from. I apologize for the camera going all a little bit wacky. Sometimes it has this little thing. My cameraman is just, sometimes he needs his coffee. That's me. So, we know that loneliness affects these parts because other things affect these parts. We have studied loneliness for, what do you think what reason really started to study loneliness was prison. People in isolation that we picked, we know that people who don't believe in prison cells, or people who are put in confinement, it really affects their chemicals. It really affects their personality traits. We as in people, as humans, have been studying loneliness as in a social behavior. So even in your own stay at home during this crisis or this pandemic, you have been put in isolation. Now, it affects family, friends, work, churches. All those things were put into place for us that you've done because you want to socialize. Socialization of humans is very important for humans. Now, we're not talking about, because you can have more, quote, a lot of friends and still only feel unlonely, not lonely with a few. And then you can be in a party with all your friends and only one person really makes. Now, there's a difference between being with people and socializing and having connection. There are two different things. Like down here, in this lower part of the area, this has a lot to do with regret, right? Regret, health vitalization, right? Because this is like when we do our meditation, we do our exercises, this is where we call the well of souls are, the well of energy. The Lord Dantian is in Chinese, the Hara is in Japanese. A lot of that we practice on through our exercises, practice, and meditation. So we clear this. And then when we talk about the healthy mind, it's understanding what is being affected by what. What is being affected by what is why the healthy mind, I'm doing a segment of the healthy mind. Hold on. I think people feel depressed even when surrounded by people. Loneliness can amplify these emotions. Absolutely, I said that. So, yeah, you can definitely feel lonely around other people. That's why self-imposing loneliness or perceived loneliness or someone putting you in isolation all triggers the same effect on the body. The difference between self-imposed loneliness and someone putting you in loneliness, it doesn't affect what you call burden. Unless you take that perception of you being put in a certain way, certain place, that you believe is your causal and effect. So like you cause someone to put you into isolation, that will create burden. So the body still can be affected in these parts, decreased in neurons, right? First increase in spinal connection and the nerve activity, but then it will start to decrease because it cannot generate enough up into the brain for the connection. Remember, we are receivers and producers. We receive and produce, we receive and produce, and we send out, right? That is what the brain connection does. There are many mammals who move to the inside of the herd, and they do that for survival. We're still a mammal by all traits. So we feel if once we get lonely or loneliness, we will start to feel endangered. That is coming from our amygdala code, the oldest part of our reptilian brain. That is coming from that code where if you are trying to protect yourself, you will then feel lonely. You need to go into protection mode, which now is being a part of the herd. Now that's just survival. Actually, locusts do that, which is found. I found that to be funny after I read it. That locusts has a sense of loneliness. That's why they group together so much, because they don't want to feel an outcast. It's fascinating that someone even would test it on locusts, I think. So now that you know what loneliness can trigger, the center part of the brain, the frontal cortex, the motor cortex, decrease in neurons, increase in spinal connection, nerve activity, but then eventually it will decrease. It affects the shoulders, the heart center, the lower dantian, down here around the gut, belly button area, and your knees. These are just the physical effects, right? Now we also know about the brain activity effects, the disconnect. Because the reason why we also know about loneliness is from nursery homes. We've read the stories how nursery homes and people have died when their partner have passed away, or they've been taken out of their family dynamics. We have been taken out of our own personal dynamics. So because of this pandemic and the stay-at-home thing, we're trying to rush back into community, because we did not impose this loneliness. It was imposed. Doesn't matter if it's for healthy or safe reasons. We still feel isolated from others. Now, here's the question, Dr. Paul. What happens if, when we get out of this, can this be reversed? Here's the problem with, if you have this now, and this stay-at-home process ends, is this reversible? Here, I'm going to write it on the board in black. The problem would be ego. That's the problem. that would be the problem. We're going back to a situation because they missed us. They missed me. I'm going back to a circumstance because they needed me. See what I'm saying? You start to institute a power struggle with your loneliness to go back into a community that may never needed you. But you don't see that. You may go back into a relationship because you believe that it was good for the relationship, but you believe that they missed you. That's ego. And when ego pushes and forces its way into a situation, you are then still not connecting to the organisms of your community. And then now, not only do you fall in loneliness, but now it's depression. Because ego tries to supersede feelings and emotions. Ego believes that it could do anything it wants by a single leap just by going in. That's not true. So what do I mean, Dr. Paul? So I didn't get picked for kickball in 6th grade or whatever, and I'm upset. So now the next time they play kickball, I'm going to definitely insert myself into this next game. Okay, so that happens. So now you're in the next game, you're in that process of the game. But now you're being ridiculed because if any mistakes happens on the team, they blame you. Now you're in a deeper part of your struggle. Because ego's inserted you, but now the system, the society, the social system still discarded you while you're in the process. That's worse. That's worse. You're not going to have any release of dopamine. You're not going to have any, there's no connection. So now you have to go back into what you call survival mode and defend yourself. So now you could be what you call overactive, hyper-angered. Overactive, hyper-anger. Because ego will refuse to see the result or the disconnect that people had for you. And for someone to look within themselves through the emotional code, through the understanding of the healthy mind, to understand that this probably wasn't the place for you. And that's okay, right? Moving to a new normal is probably what we're going to have to do. I've talked about it before. We will have to do that after this pandemic. This is a new normal. Because the place you're going to go back to may not ever miss you. And you're going to feel hurt because you've been disconnected, and loneliness is now going to trigger all these pain reflexes, right? So I hope you got some information about loneliness. Tomorrow we're going to go on what the brain does in loneliness. Just hit this, and we're going to go over this again. We have the 3 parts of the brain. The other parts of the brain are also affected, but the center, the motor, the frontal, the shoulder, the center of the heart, the stomach area or the belly button, and your knees. These are the physical actions. Decrease the neurons and algalias, and then other spinal connection increases, and then it drops. Loneliness. We're going to keep breaking down the emotional code for the rest of the week. If you have any questions, thank you for joining me here on The Healthy Mind. I'm Dr. Paul. You can always catch the rest of the show or share the show on my YouTube channel, Dr. Paul, Dyer Grandmaster. So thank you so much, and I wish you all good luck. Make sure you stay safe, stay blessed, and stay healthy. Keep your meditation, keep your prayers, and do your exercises. And then you will kill the ego code, right? Because we're going to go through the emotional code. God bless.